Here we go. Welcome back, everybody.
Hello.
Everyone have a good
Part two.
couple of weeks?
Mm-hmm.
Yes? You had a good couple of weeks? Everyone do the homework, even if you didn't bring it with you? You brought it, you redid it after you lost it.
Partial.
Yeah, that's kind of funny. Especially it's funny because the intention is for us to, separate from it, which is why we didn't want to put it in your main notebooks, that it should disappear on its own. Was saying, boy, are you ready to let go of scarcity? You're definitely ready to let go of scarcity. All right, let's talk about the homework assignment. Well, did anyone do any more work on that one particular document that we did last time about why am I not experiencing the abundance that I have? Did anyone do anything more on that, or are you pretty satisfied with what you had?
I had a really bad reaction to that.
You did?
I did, really.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was really hard because I left here in this negative kind of space.
Yeah.
Like sort of in my head, the wheels, it was like a tape recorder was going on and on and on about all those things that I wrote down over and over again. I recognize how hard I am on myself.
Right.
Same here, but I didn't have any new revelations because I constantly do this to myself all day long.
Right. Right. And one of the things that I said is that we're going to be focusing on the positive, but the point is that in the first time together, you have to discover what's hidden in there, what's preventing you from being where you want to be. Because no matter how many tools and techniques you learn moving forward, if you still have a foundation built upon scarcity beliefs, it's going to come back. It's still going to be the foundation on which you develop. All right? So, yeah, it is a little disconcerting to visit the reasons why you're experiencing your present level if you wanted your present level to be higher. But it's better to be in a state of discomfort for a little bit in the beginning of this so you can see something. It's the hidden things that kind of have a way of gnawing at us later. But once you see something and you make friends with it and you become partners with it, things become much, much simpler. And then it helps you to use the tools that you build afterward to build a brand new foundation on something that's not cracked or weak or anything. It's going to give you an optimal future that you can continue to build on rather than building it upon the limiting beliefs or scarcity feelings that you've had for a long time. All right? And the reason that we wrote it outside of our book is because the book is going to stay with you. It's something you can always refer back to. It's something that you can have. It's something that you can enhance. But we're working toward having where you came from, if it came from lack, not being you anymore. And that's why it's important to, number one, look at it, but not make it a part of your book, because it's not you anymore, and it won't be you. And sometimes when you're going through that exercise, you start to discover things you didn't realize. As soon as you start to ask why, then you get answers that you might not expect. We tend to think of the earth answers first. Oh, because blah, 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 or, well, my parents helped out my siblings with their first house, but they never helped me. Because I was the primary breadwinner and, my husband wasn't earning the same, because we had a medical crisis and we're still paying med. You always come up with an explanation in earth terms about why your financial situation is exactly the way that it is today. But that's always the secondary result. Something happened before those things manifested. There was a belief or feelings or thoughts that created whatever it is that we experienced, okay? And that's the most important thing. So you have to look beyond what are circumstances, what are external happenings, and look inside and say, well, it was because I was afraid of this, it was because I was afraid of that, it was because I was taught this, it's because in my religion we're raised to believe that good people don't have a lot of money, or whenever you have enough, you should give the rest away, and if you have more than enough, which is debatable what enough is, you're not allowed to keep the rest, or you're considered greedy, or you're not a good humanitarian, or you're not even a good person. So you have to do your own exploration on this to see what has been limiting you. When I went through this, I found some really surprising things in my own background, and it can help to stimulate your thinking that you might not even suppose is true. And here's an example. When I was a kid, my family would buy two kinds of ice cream, okay? One was the good, expensive one that tasted really yummy, and the other one was the crappy, store brand, and it was always Neapolitan, strawberry, vanilla, and chocolate, okay? I don't know what the price differential was. I was a kid. If one was 99 cents and the other was $1.19, I don't know. But I hated strawberry ice cream when I was a kid. And I also hated my foods mixed. So you give me vanilla and chocolate in the same bowl, it's not even worth eating it. So what do we have here? We have like dessert, which is supposed to be so awesome, and it's just not even worth it. What am I going to do? Scrape a little bit of vanilla off one side. Meantime, the chocolate is melting on the bottom, and I got to get that into my vanilla. So it wasn't working for me.
So wait, but what happened with the good ice cream?
It was for my father. And so, that was just one tiny example. And it's not like we had 7 or 8 kids. We didn't have a huge family. But it was a message that was given to us that we are not valuable or worthy enough of something that it is that we want. It would have been different. I never would have even had an effect by it if I were allowed to pick out the ice cream flavor, or if it still was the store brand, but I had a choice in it, or anything, or sometimes we could have the other one, So it was about the fact that there was no choice, and there was a very specific scarcity reason behind us not having a choice. And then, and what cemented it was the fact that I didn't like it. I didn't like what was available to me. So that's just one example of how I got cemented into a frame of reference that I am not worthy. Okay, that I'm not worthy of things that cost money. And when you think back on it, you have to say, what was the frame of reference here? There are people who are raised in a lot of scarcity, like downright poverty, but then they're watching something like their mother take the last piece of bread and split it 4 ways and give it to the kids and not take anything for themselves. And they're like, oh, no, it's fine. I had a big lunch today. And they're, glossing over the fact that she's starving. But, kids are often intuitive, and they know darn well that the mother took the food out of their mouths to give to the kids. So each one of the kids are going to have a reaction to that when they grow up that's not consistent with what is based on eternal wisdom. They might have one of becoming obsessed with having more food. They may wind up having weight issues. They may deny themselves things because a good person always gives to others rather than to themselves. But you can see how the least likely probability is going to be that they eat what they want, when they're hungry, they've got plenty of money for the food choices. They share, but they also keep what they like as well. That's not the likely outcome. And so it's not that parents are intending to screw us up. It happens because of whatever misbeliefs that they brought into becoming a parent to you. It's not just your parents. It's your lunch monitor. It's your parents' political affiliation, that when you walk through a room, even as a kid, and you hear a debate going on, you're picking up clues about what money means. You're getting access to information and other people's ideas about what money means all the time throughout your whole life. Your religion is a very big one. If you're raised with religions have very strong ideas about what our relationship with the material world should be like, what it should feel like, what's right and what's wrong, what we should do, a lot of musts, a lot of shoulds, a lot of guilt. And so these are the things. These affect us as adults. And to write down, why do I not have the abundance that I want in this moment? You want to look at all of these little factors, okay? One of the things that happened for me to help me on this journey of acknowledging why I was living in scarcity is I was at the time, I was having conversations with guides and they were asking me to do certain things, and one of the things that they did was they asked me to log my dreams for 21 days, okay? And I did, and I'd never done that before, and I think they said 30 days, but I'd never done it before. In the beginning, I couldn't even scrape together a sentence or a fleeting thought. Within 3 days, 5 days, because of the intention of recalling my dreams, I was writing pages and pages. I remember by day 7, I woke up in the morning and I wrote for 40 minutes. Mm-hmm. And I was like, how am I supposed to keep up with this? Mm-hmm. But I did it. And it was on the 21st day that my guide said, now go back and read your dreams. It was a huge surprise to me because some of the most incredible dreams I'd had 10 days ago, 5 days ago, I completely forgot. I'm like, how can it be that I can't remember this? It was such an important dream. Plus, I took all the time of recalling it and recording it and putting it in writing, and now I'm reading it back and I couldn't even remember it. The more detail I read, the more I could go back into the dream. But it's amazing how much we are like sieves, where things just run through us. So that was interesting. Another interesting thing was that the dreams contained not only a finite story in each dream, but there was a continuum. There were messages that were being given by a repetitive theme or a constant character or a repeat of a location or just one dream that kind of ended and seemed to, redirect itself, but then appear again 8 days later or 11 days later, where you could see a theme that wasn't evident in one night. And what jumped out at me, and it's so amazing to me, the way the human brain works, that in 21 days you think my head would have just picked up this pattern, right? But sometimes you just don't until you see it. There was a recurring theme about me arriving at a family reunion or some kind of an event. And when I got there was always a buffet meal. And rather than greeting the people, I would always go and fill my plate first. Even if I put it away somewhere, but it was important that I made sure I got fed and that I got to choose my foods. And then the dream went on where I'm like, hey, Cousin Jen, how have you been? Oh. Hey, how are you doing? And then I got into what the dream had been intending to take me to, which was the reunion itself. And I was like, wow, each time this happens, it's showing that that's how I live. I live in scarcity, believing that there's not going to be enough for me. And this is why it's so fascinating to find out what is going on with you, and asking a simple question can unlock things. It can help you to remember, what was it like growing up in my family? Was my family afraid? Were they afraid of money? Or did they have plenty of money but not share it? Did they not have enough money but pretended they did and you knew that they didn't? There's a lot of different ways. A very rare upbringing is where the family has abundance and shares it in a really healthy way, where you're not spoiled, but you have everything that it is that you need, plus there's some perks or there's some rewards, there's some sharing of love through the material world. But that is so rare. Almost no one has that exact experience when they're growing up. So whatever your experiences were, skewed your relationship with wealth and abundance now. Okay? So that's the reason why we start off with that task. Now that I've said all of this, what do you think about your lists now? Do you think that you were thorough?
Actually, I lied when I said I didn't come up with any new revelations. A couple days ago, it did hit me about my parents, like why, the reason for me, and I went right back to childhood. And I'm like, oh,
yeah.
I remember one thing.
Yeah, yeah,
Well,
and it's, huh?
I was just going to say, I didn't get any specific associations like that at all.
Okay.
Not at all.
What you went to was feeling the experience of not having the abundance that you want now.
I think not really. It's more of, it's more fear and worry.
Fear. I was going to say the fear of not having. That's exactly what I meant. I should have just said the word fear. Where you went to was the fear of, not about where you are in this moment, about what can happen in the future. That's
right.
Where the space you went to.
Exactly.
Yeah, so rather than answering the question why, you were going to...
Well, I did a little bit. I said, I gave it away, I worked for nothing, that kind of thing, but not any specifics of, what it's related to.
Okay.
In my past that makes me do that.
Right. So now...
And I don't even know if I could do that now.
So now what you can do is you can say, because I gave it all away. Why did I give it all away? You have to ask the next question then, so you can get to the core. Why did I give it all away? Because I think there's people out there that need more than I do. Because I had enough abundance that I could share it. Because, you want to answer the question, why did I give it all away? So the why goes deeper than just because I gave it all away. That's the circumstance.
Well, I thought I had it to give.
And why did you think you had it to give?
Because it was there. It wasn't something that wasn't there. I haven't been living in scarcity. So, I don't even know if I'm in the right class. I'm just afraid of money running out.
Yeah, but in order to get to the point where you are afraid that money can run out, then you want to say, why am I thinking that money can run out? And it has nothing to do with the fact that you're looking at the numbers or multiplying by the numbers of months or seeing what happened to interest rates or seeing what happened to, loss of different balances since 2008. Those are the external happenings as a result of the other things that occur. Okay, so what you want to start to do is to say, what occurred that allowed my present financial circumstances to change? Why are they different? Why did I feel that there was plenty forever and ever and ever? What created it to make me feel like the pool is finite when I never believed that it was finite in the past? Because there was a shift, and the shift is what you are working through right now. There's still something in you, in your thinking and your feeling and your believing about life or about your purpose or about money that has created the opportunity for shift. Okay? And that's what you want to think about.
Yeah, because I'm still not in touch with that.
Yes, exactly. So this is where it's not necessarily easy, but let me throw out a couple of possibilities. I'm not saying they're the right possibilities for you, but I'm going to throw out some possibilities. And if they resonate, fine. And if not, they'll stimulate your own thought process about what else it might be. Okay? As a married person, you felt very comfortable that prosperity and abundance would be forthcoming forever. That you felt that would always continue. And when you became the sole parent, that relationship that you had, or that kind of hidden support, whether you acknowledged it or not, disappeared, because you could have grown up with the belief that women have a support system, that women have something that they can fall back on, that women have something that they can rely on. So that's just like one possibility. Another possibility is that cope is something that's extremely important to you, very important to you, and understandably. Cope is Lily's foundation, okay? And I'll let her describe to you what it is. Because of the passion and because of all of the eternal wisdom and spirituality that is behind cope, it is not necessarily something that's operating from your left brain. It's something that comes from the right brain. And yet, in any foundation or in any endeavor, it's important that we have what comes through the heart and the soul and the vision, but then the earth partnership of planning and expertise and, taking small steps or large steps, whatever it is, but about managing the earth solutions, okay? But because you're a very right brain person, that part of it's been foreign to you. It's not something that you're comfortable with. Like same as if I pick up my husband's iPhone, I might as well just go back to a rotary dial with a cord to the wall. So if I don't get it, how am I supposed to function unless I bring someone else in to operate the iPhone for me? And a lot of your perceptions are identical to that this is not your knowledge base, this is not your area of expertise, you're not even really caring that much about left brain stuff. It's not even like if you went and took an accounting class or a finance class that you wouldn't excel. You probably would excel, but it doesn't matter to you. It's not even on your radar. And so while you moved forward with the right brain parts of giving it life and continuing to breathe life into it, it created a change in your financial picture because the other activities weren't balanced. It wasn't growing on both sides. It was growing on one side in disproportion, okay? And so that could be the whole single answer for you personally. Do you see?
That there wasn't this balance.
Yes. Yes. And so the key here is why we're looking at all of the inceptions, all of the unconscious things that happen. The reason we're looking at them is so that we can look at them. Because the only way to prevent them from being like Rottweilers on our ankles in the future is to know that they're there. If you don't know that something's hanging on to you or holding you onto the earth, it's going to continue to hold you onto the earth. You're going to see the results in your physical manifestation, but you might not know what the anchor is. It's important to recognize what the anchors are first in order to let go of them. And sometimes it's just as simple as looking at it. The little tiny aha moments. For you, it might be one or two things that are kind of broad. And for other people, it might be a series of 15 or 16 small things that all added up. Okay?
How do you know if you opened all of that stuff up?
When I do a task like that starts with why, when you think of it as a flow chart, every time you get to the end of your why and you've answered everything that you believe, then what you do is you go to your answers and you ask why. Okay? And you might already have hit the end of the flow chart there, but that next why might open up an entirely different path for you to look at. Okay, so for example, if I were to say, when I went through all of this 7-8 years ago, whenever it was, and I said, why am I living in scarcity? Well, because my father denied me some of the basic pleasures that a child should be entitled to, and he could afford them. So I am not, I'm not used to having them. So then, in the beginning, it's like, because my father denied me basic pleasures or even needs. And I'm like, well, why did that create a scarcity mentality? Well, because then I felt that he was worth it, but I wasn't. But why did that make you feel like you weren't worth it? So you follow each answer until you get to the point where there's nowhere else to go. There's nowhere else to go.
Why the person did it, why you felt
why
that way.
you had the experiences and the reactions that you did to what happened. Okay? What's very strange is in a family with multiple siblings, everyone can experience the exact same happenings, and one will grow up and manifest it in this direction, one will grow up and manifest it in this direction, and yet they've experienced exactly the same. So if me and all of my siblings said, well, our dad didn't believe that we should have basic pleasures or basic needs met, why would one of my siblings live this way in relationship with money, this one this way, and this one that way? So it's about you. It's not about what generically that equation would cause in anybody's life, because it doesn't matter. And I look at my siblings, and it is kind of pretty wild that all three of us have incredibly different relationships with money. All three of us do. And they all stem from the same core. So it's about you looking and saying, why did this affect me? Why did this affect me? And it's something that you can see in your day-to-day life in how you use money in your relationships with other people, too. Are you generous to your income and asset level? Are you generous more than your income and asset level? Are you living in holding things back greater than your income and asset level? Or are you holding things back to your income and asset level? Do you understand all four of those? Okay? So for example...
Is there a right or wrong answer to that?
No, it's about a level of comfort. And when you are leaving a level of comfort, then, or you're in an extreme of any kind, if you extremely give away or you extremely hoard, both of those are symptoms of being out of balance with your relationship with money. Okay? So of course, in that spectrum, generosity to hoarding, living in total scarcity to living in total greed, that would be another spectrum. In each of those spectrums, there's a huge range. But for you personally, where do you want to be in that range, and where are you in comparison to that range? That's the important thing. So if you have a great amount of assets in the bank, but a very low income, how do you feel in regard to what you're giving away? If you have a very high income and very little assets, how do you feel about what you give away or what you share or what you donate? If you have a low income and low assets, how do you feel about what you're sharing? How do you feel about your relationship with money with other people? Okay? It takes a lot of reviewing to perceive your own relationship with money. Feel free to jot down things that pop into your head tonight, and and I can send you guys this recording too, just to go through these questions.
So how do you know when you're in the right
So when you
place? When you feel good?
When you feel that you hit the nail on the head. I saw your eyes pop at one point tonight. When you get that aha moment, like, yes, that sounds like my story. That sounds like what I'm living now and the reason why I'm living it now. When you feel like you were able to reveal a truth that you might not have completely noticed or acknowledged or accepted before, and then you feel comfortable with the knowledge, like there's not this pain inside of your chest that says, no, that's not it, there's something more. You'll know it. You'll know when you have found it. You'll know when you have found it. For me, the story about the ice cream, it sounds very, 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 very simple. And yet, it is the one thing that profoundly affected my relationship with abundance as an adult. I mean, yes, it was echoed through all material experiences as a child in my relationship with my father. but it profoundly influenced my relationship with my own feeling of worth in the material world. Okay? So for me, that was it. It wasn't religion, it wasn't politics, it wasn't the neighborhood, it wasn't, being in the lower socioeconomic part of a community where there were others experiencing more abundance. There's a lot of factors that come into play. But for me personally, when I hit on that one, I knew that was the source of the scarcity for me personally. For you, Lily, your circumstances are far more unique than most people's. You have a far different story in your relationship with money than most people do. I would say that the things I've said tonight are going to be really hitting home with 5 people here. For you, your story is an original. Your story has a lot more to do with the spark of what you passionately pursued with your whole life based on what your circumstances were for beginning cope. That changed the way that you lived beforehand, and understandably. But the story's different for you. It's a different story. So now you can start to review what your financial relationship is with cope and how you can build that stronger and independent of you and your support, and to understand that the value of money is an expression of love, just the same way that the value of giving time is.
No, I see that perfectly.
Yes.
Can I just say, I don't want to take up a lot of time, but it's just really interesting what happened in the last couple of weeks. Can I just say it really quick?
Oh yeah, no.
Because it's kind of sitting with me, my head's kind of pounding. In my past, and I alluded to this, when I was married, so it kind of didn't work with the first example.
I know, and I knew that.
So, my husband was a compulsive gambler, and he literally gambled away a whole house. And, I was in tremendous debt, really hand to mouth. And my husband had an uncle, and he managed a building. So it wasn't like we had completely nothing, because my husband's grandfather had this apartment, this rental building, and we had income from that building, rental income. But my husband was so in debt that he had borrowed against that. So I would say for about 5 years we didn't get anything from this rental building. God bless you. So it was like we didn't even have it. So this uncle, who was so generous, and he really bailed us out so many times, is dying. He, we don't even know what really happened, but he's been in a coma for about a week now. And so it's really hard, because he was just, he did so much for us. And I know, he knows it without me going there. I know if I went there, he'd be able to hear me, because he sort of, has a foot in both worlds now. And I've tried to really, talk to him, and knowing that I don't have to be there for him to hear me. Just thanking and being so grateful. I went to the cemetery, to his wife, spoke at the grave, to him. But it's just very interesting, that this all happened around, this course.
Yes.
Because I know that so much is related
Yes.
to this time in my life. And, I've said to myself, well, I already learned that lesson. I don't have to learn that lesson again. And, but I keep on hearing, this is what I wanted to tell the story, because I keep on hearing my uncle. So ultimately, after my husband died, my uncle sold this building. And so there were 3 partners, and, it went to me. So, I was fine. And, but I hear my uncle in my head saying, this is it, there's no more, you know, this has to last you now, you know, this has to last you now for the rest of your life. And, you know, I was alone, and he was, you know, he was telling me, you know, this is it, you know, like after this, like the well's dry, you know, invest wisely, you know. So then, you know, my investments, you know, they took a tumble.
Yes.
Right? And so, you know, like when I didn't write this, you know, from scarcity, like living with scarcity. You know, I wrote the reason that I'm not living with more abundance. And so
that's
immediately,
exactly the way that I phrased it, to take some of the
so immediately,
angst out of it.
It's, you know, like just beating myself up. I invested poorly. I didn't take an active role in my investing. I spent too much. You know, and then I wrote, do I? You know, it was like I know now I have to create revenue, and I know I have to be able to do that. And the cope thing, you know, I also lost my daughter. You know, she passed in a car accident, and this was 20 years ago. I started cope in her memory, and it's an organization that supports families where there's been a loss of a child. And you know, Karen is right. Like, it just had a life of its own. I didn't even think about it. I didn't even think about doing it. And it was so unlike me because if you read this list, it's just, you know, it's like, I'm not bringing money, you know, in through my own potential. It's all about, you know, like doubting my potential to bring in money. But I didn't doubt myself when I created this foundation.
Do you draw a salary?
Hmm?
Do you draw a salary?
No.
Why? Are you kidding
No,
me?
No.
and she makes generous donations as well.
Yeah. So, yeah, since 1999.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
Why don't you draw a salary, though,
Yeah.
if
This-
you're
It's
doing
your
all the
job.
work?
but I have an executive director.
What does that mean?
Still, but you're still involved with it, right? At some, or
Well,
working, or
everything,
doing.
everything, you know, passes by me.
Mm-hmm.
You know, she runs everything by me. But, you know, she runs it. She's built it into what it is. I mean, I couldn't have done that. I'm a visionary, so I
Yes,
saw it.
exactly.
Yes.
And I manifested everything happening. I manifested her, the executive director. I mean, everything, you know, is just, I see it in a certain way, and it just is. It just becomes that.
Yes,
Mm-hmm.
exactly. And the thing about it is that your visions were always about the soul of Cope, you know, the heart and the soul of it. And that, it's not congruent with thinking about the financial aspects of it. You know, if you build it, they will come. That's more of what the theory is, that
Yeah.
it has a life of its own. It's going to work, and if it's you that's supporting it at times, which you've done very, very frequently, then that's okay, because as long as you felt that there was a ton of abundance for your own life, what difference did it make?
Right.
So that's the key, is that it's about changing the paradigm so that Cope is becoming revenue producing for itself, covering the expenses and your executive director's salary, and also permitting you to not only not donate, but also permitting you to accept a salary. You know, I know. See, as soon as you
It's
go,
not in the budget.
well, we know that. But you know what? A cup of 7-Eleven coffee wasn't in my budget when I began this process. All right? The point is, everybody starts somewhere. And as long as you make a statement that is definitive, it is not in the budget, then that becomes your paradigm. That becomes your frame of reference. That becomes the go-to place. That becomes the river that the water flows down over and over and over again.
You just said, if I envision it, it happens.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I'm like, yeah,
That's
you're
exactly-
all these other
that's
things.
exactly
We're thinking
it.
the same thing. But what if